Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Toyson Ford and Hy-Vee. Also, don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, the Residence Branding Company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description for you to get some podcast swag and some show swag over there too. So, final roster projection, that's coming up here in just a sec. And the back end of this episode, second half, going to catch up with a quick chat with Justus Cleveland, sports director extraordinaire, Sports Scene 13. I'll talk a little Brewers, talk a little Packers with him. But I want to lead off this episode of the podcast with my final Packers roster projection. Preseason is officially in the books for the Packers. It is now decision time. It is now decision time for Goody, for LaFleur, for the entire front office and coaching staff here. How do they trim their roster down to the initial 53-man roster? Packers have to do it by Tuesday afternoon, so time is really not on their side here. You can imagine they probably spent all weekend talking about it, reviewing it, going over the film, all that stuff, really trying to figure everything out there. But now this is when big decisions have to be made for this Packers team, their initial 53-man roster. I've got my final 53-man Packers roster projection, if you will. I had one last week heading into the final game here. Couple things have changed after this preseason game that we witnessed on Saturday. So let's just jump into it, all right? Here is my final roster projection for the Packers. And it'll probably be completely wrong in a couple of other areas. No surprise, Jordan Love will make the roster here. But the big question is who's going to be the backup quarterback for this thing? Matt LaFleur, after the game, didn't necessarily give a big ringing endorsement to his backup quarterbacks when he was asked. Because what's the main thing for a backup quarterback? If that guy has to go in, do you feel confident that you can still win the game or win a game? When he was asked about that, he said, "We'll see." Certainly, again, I think it's similar to the kicking competition in terms of there were some really good moments, and then there were some things we absolutely have to do better. And then we'll evaluate everything that's out there for us. So that's not a very big endorsement for Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt. I personally feel like that maybe Green Bay should look at bringing in a veteran, but I think if you bring in a veteran, you may still want to keep one of these guys until that veteran is maybe up to speed in terms of the offense and such. Now, maybe some are better suited for that, like a Ryan Tannehill and that. So I personally feel like that they should. I just question whether they're going to or not. I feel like if I had to make a pick, I don't feel like they're going to bring in a veteran. I could be completely wrong in this instance. It's just right now, I don't feel like that's going to be the case. I think Sean Clifford's going to get the job. I think Michael Pratt's going to be back on the practice squad. I would have concerns if Sean Clifford has to go out there and play for an extended time. Now, to be fair, would Sean Clifford have performed better in the preseason games, if the number one offensive line was out there, that the number one running back was out there, that the top receivers were out there? Yeah, probably, right? Probably would have been the case. But we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. So I think Sean Clifford will be the backup. I think Pratt will be on the practice squad. I still would bring a veteran in. I don't know if they're going to do that, and if I had to pick one way or the other, I don't think they will. Running back might be the most difficult one of the most difficult ones to project here, because it's different than the other ones in terms of trying, who beat out who to win jobs. It's because you have injuries to this group. We know the top one. It's Josh Jacobs. That's easy. After that, it's a little muddy. It's not as clear. A.J. Dillon is making the team, but he's got the stinger. The stinger issue with him. Is he going to be out? Is he going to be ready for week 1? Is he not? Then you got a rookie in Marshawn Lloyd, who we saw, for a few snaps in the first game and then nothing after that, and he's dealing with a hamstring injury. So your top 3 running backs, 2 of the 3 are dealing with injuries right now. Does that open the door for Emmanuel Wilson? I think it does. I think at this point you have to carry 4 running backs on your team. Now I know you got the IR. You can place a guy on injured reserve right now. That's changed this year where you don't have to carry them on the 53. You can put a couple guys on injured reserve and not have to do that whole, well, that's why we always say initial, right? Because you'd have to carry them on, and then after the next day you can put them on injured reserve and such. You don't have to do that for a couple guys this year. I don't know if they would put Marshawn Lloyd on injured reserve. They could. They potentially could. But I think right now, as it stands, I've got him carrying 4 running backs. I know a lot of other people just have the 3, but I think you got to protect yourself here a little bit, and I think Emmanuel Wilson is that next running back that gets a job. I think he deserves it. I think he's earned it. So I've got 4 running backs. The other position group here that I got to tell you, it's pretty hard to figure out who's going to get this final spot, in my opinion. Final 2 spots. Because your top 4 receivers are locks. Christian, Romeo, Reed, Wicks, 4 locks. Signed, sealed, delivered. You're ready to go. I think the Packers keep 6 total wide receivers. Toure, I think, is not going to make the team. So you've got 3 guys for the final 2. Grant DeBose, after the first week, probably looks like a dude that was going to make the team. Showcased his pass-catching ability. Good in the running game in terms of blocking. Bo Melton, we saw what he did at the end of last year. He makes a nice touchdown in the game on Saturday. Malik Heath was a guy last year that surprised a lot of people. A guy, again, that he ain't afraid to go out there and throw some blocks. He also had a touchdown on Saturday. Grant didn't have the greatest game. This, to me, is going to be interesting. Of these 3 guys, which 2 do they keep? I don't think they keep 7. I don't think there's enough spots on this roster to keep 7 wide receivers. Now, heading into this game, I had the Packers keeping Grant. And then it was between Bo Melton and Malik Heath. And then, lo and behold, Bo Melton and Malik Heath both scored touchdowns. I think Bo Melton makes the team because I think a lot of it, you have to look at what he did towards the end of last year. So Bo Melton, let's just say 5th wide receiver. So who's the 6th? Is it Grant or is it Malik Heath? Now, I feel like between these 2, whoever they don't keep, they're going to be able to bring back on the practice squad. So with that in mind, I think it's Grant they keep. And Malik Heath will be waived. But Malik Heath will be brought back on the practice squad. That's how I see that one kind of playing out here for that wide receiver spot. In terms of the tight ends, I think it's pretty cut and dry. I think it's pretty cut and dry here. It's 4 tight ends. It's Luke Musgrave. It's Tucker Kraft. It's Tyler Davis, and it's Ben Sims. I think those are your 4 tight ends. Now we're back to the offensive line. Again, a position towards the back end of the depth here. You got some question marks. You got some unknowns a little bit here. We know the top, I would say 7. We know the top 7. It's pretty secure here. It's Rasheed Walker, it's Elton Jenkins, it's Josh Myers, it's Sean Ryan, it's Zach Tom, it's Jordan Morgan, and it's Jacob Monk. Those are easily your top 7. After that, maybe it gets a little dicey. Or maybe dicey is a little dramatic. Maybe just some question marks surrounding it. I think Travis Glover gets it. I think he gets a spot on here. And I am going to add, this is a little bit different from my other prediction. I thought Kadeem Telfer might be a guy that gets that 9th spot. I have them keeping 9 offensive linemen. Could they keep 10? Yep, they have done it before. I think they've even kept 11 at one point. But I'm going to switch it up here a little bit. I'm going to have the Packers keeping the veteran Andre Dillard. And I think what maybe kind of separates it here a little bit is that Dillard, when you look at it from Cleveland and Denver, according to Pro Football Focus, he didn't allow, in 29 pass blocking snaps, didn't allow a pressure. He could play a little swing tackle. He's even got a little experience at the guard spot. He didn't play Saturday. He's dealing with a shoulder injury too. But I think he will get that 9th spot. A guy like Kadeem Telford you can bring in on the practice squad there. I got 9 offensive linemen, and that's how I see that one shaping out. Defensive line, I mean, Aaron Mosby tried everything to make this team here. He had an interception on Saturday. He had the strip sack that led to an Anthony Johnson Jr. touchdown on Saturday. The thing is, I think they've got their 5 defensive ends, and I think 5 defensive ends is all they can carry. Unless they pick Aaron over Brenton Cox Jr. I think they still like the potential of Brenton Cox Jr. 6 defensive ends doesn't seem likely at this point. Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox are your defensive ends. Defensive tackles, this one's maybe the easiest one to predict. Jonathan Ford, I know he was a big man and he had a good camp. He got a little bit banged up. He got hurt in that game on Saturday. So maybe if there was a little bit of push there, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden. Bada bing, bada boom. There you go. So that's your defensive front, your defensive tackles, your defensive ends. Linebacker here, I think is fairly cut and dry here. However, there is a dude that could maybe make a push. If there's a certain position group that, hey, maybe they only keep 3 running backs, maybe Christian Welch can make this team. I just don't see it right now. I think, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, Eric Wilson, Edrin Cooper, and Tyron Hopper, who I've been really liking in these last couple of games. I mean, the reaction, the speed that we're seeing from him, he's looking pretty good. But Christian Welch, what he brings to special teams, I mean, that may vault him into this top 53. But again, remember, if he's on the practice squad, Packers can elevate guys from the practice squad up to 3 times. They can elevate him on game days. That could be the play here for a guy like Christian Welch. Does it run the risk that somebody else could claim him? Absolutely. It absolutely does. But I don't see, especially with the inside linebackers, with this base defense of a 4-3, I don't know if they can afford to keep 6. So if they could, I think they would prefer to keep a guy like Welch on the practice squad, maybe elevate him on some days, and then you see if there's an injury, and then you can promote him to the active roster for full time. Corner, again, is pretty cut and dry at the top. Jair, Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon. I think Kalen King has done enough to win this job. Now, this could also be another position where, hey, if they decide to keep 3 running backs and maybe just 5 corners, opens up a couple other spots potentially. In the past, I would at least like 6 corners. I've only got 5. And I think a lot of that has to deal with the depth at safety, which we'll get here in a second. So to me, it's Jair, it's Stokes, it's Valentine, it's Nixon, and it's Kalen King. I can easily see Corey Ballantyne making this team too. I could easily see Corey Ballantyne making this team. If that's the direction they go and they keep 6. I wouldn't be surprised by that at any point. But the way my 53 worked out, I just have 5. I only have room for 5. And I'm comfortable with that, even though in the past I would have a minimum of 6 because of the safety depth they got and the versatility that they've got with their safeties. Xavier McKinney's your top safety, no question about it. But this was a fantastic preseason for a guy like Evan Williams, who you can also play as a nickel corner, as a slot corner, has experience with that. Bullard has experience with that. Javon Bullard has experience with that. I got a feeling that they're going to want to try to create situations where you've got Xavier, Javon, and Evan Williams all on the field at the same time. How do you do that? Play a little nickel, play a little slot corner over there too. Got that versatility. Got that experience with those guys. And remember, don't forget, Anthony Johnson Jr. in college was a converted corner to safety. He's got coverage experience. Oladapo hasn't had a lot of time in camp, but he's a 5th-round pick, and I don't see the Packers giving up on him. He's a more prototypical strong safety, and I think you're going to see him involved in special teams in the early parts of his career. Daniel Whalen, he's your punter. Matt Orzak, he's your long snapper. Now it's down on the kicker. I still think it's Anders, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's another kicker by the time they play Philly on September 6th. LaFleur, when he was asked about, again, not a big ringing endorsement for his kickers when he was asked about it on Saturday. When he was asked if he thinks his week 1 kicker is on the team, he responded, "That's not even a question for me, to be honest with you. We've got a really good sample size, and then we'll see what happens just around the league." Certainly, there were some really good moments. Both those guys went in there, hit a 54, 55-yarder. And then there's a poor moment where you missed a chip shot. Again, a lot of good. Some we know we can be better at, and we'll wait and see. That doesn't bode well. That's not a big ringing endorsement for any of your kickers on this team. So I feel like Anders is going to make the team, but I feel like Green Bay is really going to be scouting or scouring the waiver wires and maybe potentially looking at, is there teams that have a couple kickers that maybe they can send a late draft pick to? Possibly. Very possible. But I think initially, that's why I'm saying initial 53, Anders is on there. So, there you have it. That's my 53-man roster, my initial 53-man roster when it gets officially announced tomorrow for the Packers. All right, let's take a quick break, and I want to chat a little Brewers and more Packers with Mr. Justus Cleveland. It's coming up after these quick words. Get ready for football season with Hy-Vee. Whether you're tailgating at the game or having a party at your home, Hy-Vee has all the essentials you need for game day. From meats to put on the grills to snacks and beverages, including their huge wine and spirits department, Hy-Vee is your tailgating headquarters. And don't forget to check out their sports shop too, where you can get some swag to help cheer on your favorite team, including the local high schools. It's football season. Score a touchdown with all of your football needs with Hy-Vee.
Every day when you log into ChumbaCasino.com, the ultimate online social casino, you get a free daily bonus. Imagine if you got daily bonuses in other parts of your life.
I chose French fries over loaded French fries.
I asked Stuart from accounting about his weekend, even though I don't care.
I updated my operating system without having to call tech support.
Collect your free daily bonus at ChumbaCasino.com now. And live the Chumba life.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. We're getting set for another busy travel season, vacations, taking our kids to all their games and activities, and you need a proper vehicle to get you to where you're going and safely. That's where Toys & Ford can help you. Toys & Ford will go the extra mile to provide you with compelling options for new and used car shopping. They will gladly work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. They're committed to giving drivers across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service. Check them out for yourself. Visit Toys & Ford in Chippewa Falls today and check out their website, toysandford.net. Sports director for Sports Scene 13, Justus Cleveland, joining me here for just a little bit. Let's start off talking some football. Packers cut down day, got to do it by tomorrow, preseason wise. I don't know if a lot has changed in terms of our questions from the when training camp first started to where it's at now. But maybe the biggest thing that kind of emerged, because I don't know if it was really talked about before, but now maybe it's a question about the backup quarterback, because I feel like that's Matt LaFleur didn't really give it a ringing endorsement. I think when you enter the third preseason game and you're alternating every 2 series,
you're really trying to.
That shows the job is up there, which I don't think a lot of us expected at the beginning of the year, and now it's kind of reared its ugly head, if you will.
Yeah.
And remember, it wasn't that long ago when a lot of fans wanted Sean Clifford to be the starter last year.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't feel like they're going to bring a veteran in. I could be wrong. Maybe it depends on what's out there. But I feel like Clifford's going to be the starter, and if they do bring a veteran in, I think you still keep Clifford, not starter, but I think you still keep Clifford on until that veteran's maybe caught up to speed. Like, I'm getting flashbacks of when they brought in Seneca Wallace after cut-down days in 2013.
Yeah.
And didn't spend the whole training camp there. Then he gets hurt when Rodgers got hurt that year, too. So
I mean, you look at it and you try not to judge too much on preseason, not having the ones out there, because if Sean Clifford was to come in, he's playing with the one offense.
Yep.
But neither of them did anything to stand out.
Right.
Like, no one grabbed the old brass ring and ran with it there. It was a lot of just blah.
Yep.
And I don't know how much that rings on them, how much that rings on what the offense was doing under them.
Yep.
So I don't see a veteran coming, because I just don't think that it really, you said the Seneca Wallace. I don't know, you bring somebody in off like the practice squad and just but I feel like all 3 of those guys are going to be, either one of them is going to be on the practice squad.
Yep.
And then I'm still thinking Clifford. It's Clifford's job, just because he has a year under his belt.
Right.
So you keep him, and you can see if you can stash the guy on practice squad, which has been the Packers' way for a long time there. So right now I don't see them bringing in a veteran. I don't know who you would like.
Tannehill is the most popular name out there, and I think he intertwined a little bit with LaFleur the 1 year he was there. But
that's true. So you at least have a little bit.
Yeah. But then, that's up to Tannehill whether he hasn't played at all.
Yeah.
This year too. So
the Packers just aren't a team that brings in a big name backup. I mean, I'm trying to think of
Vince Young got a lot of hype for like a week or 2
Oh,
when
that's
he was
right.
brought over there.
I didn't even forgot about that.
But
yeah, like most of the time it's been the starter, and then it's just
or Tim Couch way back.
Yeah. Oh man, I lived through that. The Tim Couch.
Didn't Achilles Smith try?
Yeah, Achilles Smith was another. So I mean, there's been guys that have been brought in during the preseason,
right?
But you go back to the regular seasons, there aren't really a lot of Seneca Wallace wasn't a big name.
No,
he was just a career backup that they brought in. So
yeah,
I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking of the last time during the regular season that they
Matt
had
Flynn.
Yeah,
but that was because they had to,
right? Matt, that was a guy who knew the system, so you just throw him back in there and save that season for him.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's just like one of those things. I just don't see the Packers doing it, but I could easily be wrong with that. If Matt LaFleur's like, hey, if Jordan Love goes down, I don't feel like either of these guys can do a good enough job to even get us to a victory. Then Ryan Tannehill could be that name. It's just, it would be weird because it just isn't something that is happening. Jim McMahon under Favre,
right?
But McMahon was at the tail end of his career, so that was Ryan Tannehill probably is at the tail end of his career too. So.
I'm struggling otherwise because, I mean, if you're going to make that move, you would think it's got to be somebody familiar with the system a little bit, too, so that, you're not really catching up to speed or spending a lot of time trying to catch up to speed.
Yeah.
A little bit there, too, in case, knock on wood, something happens to Jordan Love right away.
Right, exactly. And in this day and age in the NFL, I mean, how many quarterbacks have we seen the last 2 years? I'd love to see, the total. I'm sure it's 60 different starting quarterbacks in, the last couple of seasons.
Right.
So the chances of it happening, there's better chances that he doesn't start all 17 games. I hate to say it. But you look at the percentages are, nowadays, of a guy starting all 17 games are low.
Right.
Compared to what they used to be.
Hey, is Tim Boyle still available?
That is Tim Boyle. Kurt Benkert's still on Twitter. So
that's right, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I hope we don't get into another 2013 where it was Seneca, then Scott Tolzien, then Matt Flynn, and it was
at least Flynn came in, and he steadied the ship that year.
He did.
He held that.
Flynn it to win it. That Cowboys game, oh, yeah.
I was there at, when he came in the second half was the Vikings game, got the tie.
Yep.
And that ended up being huge because that got them in the playoffs.
Yep.
If he doesn't get that tie, so that was at least it was nice to see him come in and show that he still had the skills. The guy got dogged on for getting that big. It wasn't even his fault.
Right. Exactly.
Seattle pays him, and everybody's like, "Oh, what's he going to do? Give the money back?"
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You cash in when you have the opportunity.
No one gave him a chance to play.
Yeah.
He played in the preseason in Seattle.
And Russell Wilson ended up being Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
So.
Then he went to the Raiders, and I think the Raiders maybe played him for one game.
Yeah.
And then was like Buffalo. Was Buffalo thrown in there as well or something like that?
I think so.
I think he was just like the back. Yeah. So, I mean, he was a great backup for the Packers. Yep. You look back on it, he was a really good backup for the Packers and helped them win some games. Had some big games. Obviously, the 5-touchdown game against the
Lions.
Thank you. Yeah. The Chiefs gave the loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Rodgers was like calling the plays in the second half for Flynn, too, I think.
What a world that was.
Right. Kicker, it looks like it was Anders. I still think it's going to be Anders.
I do too.
I think that chip shot left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, including LaFleur again after the post game.
Yeah.
You hit the long one, then you miss. I mean, I still think it's going to be Anders, unless something happens to be available out there that they weren't expecting.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be Greg Joseph. I think it's Anders or somebody that's not on the team.
Yeah, I think it's Anders. I just don't. I mean, it's different this day and age because people don't have, discard draft picks a lot quicker than they used to.
Yeah.
But this isn't I don't think he's like anywhere near B.J. Sander, on a punter and that.
Or Brett Conway at that when Ryan Longwell won it.
I feel like the potential. I mean, the leg is there. The leg is world class, and if he can just get his accuracy tuned up. But I know there's a lot of fans out there that are worried about what happened in the playoffs, a chip shot. Mm-hmm. Ultimately costing you a game, but if he can, man, if they feel like he can do it, I think he's the man. I just, like you said, unless somebody way that you're not expecting to be out there.
Yep.
And we've seen that in years past.
Right. I will say though, very weird to see a number 2 out on the field that wasn't Mason Crosby as a kicker.
Yeah.
That was really weird to see that.
Is Mason still staying loose? No, he officially retired, didn't he? Over the off season.
Is he working on his golf game now too? I mean, he was a big time golfer.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's funny because Ryan Longwell was the same way.
Right.
Kickers. I mean, it's the same. It's
Which
the same
makes
motion,
sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to factor in your wind and all that, and the fades or the draws a little bit. So it's arms or legs.
Yep.
It's all in the hips, though.
It's all in exactly kicking and golf. It's all in the hips.
Yep. All right, just a few minutes left. Brewers, they win the series against Oakland, so a nice bounce back. We are looking at how Major League Baseball in these final. Brewers have 32 games left. And, I mean, you'd want to talk about races all across the board. Lawnmowers all over the place. You want to talk about races all across the board here. I mean, the American League East, the American League Central with the Twins and the Guardians and the Royals. Houston's 4.5 up over Seattle. The NL West, I mean, Diamondbacks are not making it easier on the Dodgers right now. They're not letting it up.
No, even the Padres, too. Yeah. They're not dead yet.
No. NL East, I mean, it's the Phillies. Braves are in that final wild card spot. Then you got the Brewers there. But, I know it's just one series over the weekend and such, but there was a stat I saw. They popped up, and I'm like, okay, it was only August 12th, so it's not much. But they said starting ERA, Brewers were number 1 since August 12th, which, okay, what, 2 weeks? Not even 2 weeks over there.
That's not a big sample size.
But I think, we're starting to see some consistency. Colin Ray, though.
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio cast coming back from Green Bay, and I think it was Lane Grindle that said that. He's like, when Colin Ray's on the mound, you just have this, calming feeling. And I think what he was trying to say was, is he going to blow by you? No. He's not going to overpower you. He's not going to do that. He's kind of had that one game per month where everything just kind of exploded. But he said even that Dodgers game, when he allowed 7 earned runs, he still went 6 innings.
Yeah.
Where it's just when he's on the mound and where he's going to get that start, you have that calming feeling you kind of know what to expect with Colin Ray.
Oh, yeah. I think he's just he throws strikes. Mm-hmm. And he finds he can find the corners. And, it's kind of I'm not going to go. I mean, saying Greg Maddux X is going way to, that's the highest praise you can get.
I got to watch that documentary. Everybody says it was really good.
Yeah, so. I saw bits and pieces of that. It looks awesome, too. But, when he's out there, you're like, okay, he's just going to – he does what he does. Mm-hmm. It's not the feeling you have when Freddie Peralta's out there, who's your quote-unquote ace.
Right.
Because Freddie can give up runs in bunches.
Yep.
And it can come early. Colin's just been it's amazing. Like, his control has been so great. It's still one of those, like, you almost still, when he throws, you're like, this day and age in baseball, how has he won as many games as he has?
Right.
Because you're so used to this day and age now. You don't see the guys who don't blow it by guys.
Right. Yeah.
But to have control, it's good to see that somebody can have control and still get wins in today's game. So, yeah, it's been fun to see. I think still heading towards the playoffs, there's a lot of that air of certainties, like when the Brewers match up against somebody else's aces. I'm more worried probably about the batters because that's just, we're like yesterday, we saw it against the A's.
Right.
You just have a shutdown. The top of the lineup couldn't do anything yesterday against the A's.
Yep.
You got luck. Willie Adames had another nice. Willie Adames has been playing just great.
Right. Exactly.
But you don't have much protection right now for him.
No.
And that's tough. Losing Yelich is such a big blow in that way that you lose protection for these other hitters.
Right.
Even Contreras, you kind of lose a little bit for him, and he's a contact hitter. So.
Yeah, you have that missing void of that third hitter, right? I mean, we've seen
Rhys
Hoskins
is supposed to be that guy, but Rhys has been just like hit or miss. Like,
exactly.
Literally, like, go 0 for 28, hit a home run.
Yep.
Then go 0 for how many again after that?
Right. Exactly.
But that's kind of what you knew coming in with him.
Yeah.
Guys like Gary Sanchez, I've been more impressed by what Gary Sanchez has done than I ever expected to. I didn't think he was going to make the team or even be on the roster. But when he's actually been in the lineup, he's been that, he's not even playing catcher most of the time. He's just DHing a lot of it. So you got some of that. But, again, they're scrappy.
Right.
And they know how to, and Pat Murphy knows how to make those moves. If it's bunting, getting guys and get runs in. So it's just one of those, when you get into the playoffs, they got to be so scrappy. Like, they can't miss opportunities.
Right.
You're going to be, if you're going against Clayton Kershaw, that whole Dodgers staff, you're not going to have, every opportunity is going to be a small one. Any of these teams that are going to make it. So
there was really quick. There was a piece by I saw it online, but the Brewers embracing the intentional walk. I don't know if you saw this or anything like that, but Pat Murphy. I don't know if it's a little old school and such, but they looked at the last couple of years. And it was Jack Stern that wrote this piece. When you look at when Pat Murphy signaled to intentionally walk Brent Rooker in the 7th inning of Saturday's win the Oakland A's, it was the 22nd time the Brewers elected to send an opposing hitter directly to first base. Only 4 teams have issued more intentional walks. It's a dramatic, strategic shift for a team that issued a combined 19 intentional walks over the past 2 seasons.
I can see it because, you look back on it, you don't remember Counsell walking guys. So there's definitely been a shift. And if they are using the stats to figure things, it's different than what it was under Counsell.
Yep.
You can hitting wise,
guys are bunting more, whether it's by their choice or Murphy. You've kind of had both responses to that. So obviously stealing, you know.
The analytics were there. I think under Counsell were heavy analytics. Especially you saw that with the pitching staff for a long when he first started. It kind of changed, I feel like, as he went on, because they were doing the opening pitcher a lot more than they were. They didn't have any real starting pitchers for a while there, but I think Murphy's more of a natural baseball guy, and I think you're seeing the instincts more than you're seeing analytics with him. I'm sure there's still stuff that we're not privy to that they're using analytics with.
There's, I think, a nice mixture between the two, and from this piece it says the front office supplies Murphy with several analytical resources to inform his in-game decision-making, including a breakdown of when putting a runner on via walk carries the least risk. Quote, there's a script for it. The people upstairs have created a probability of when is better, but even he was shocked at how many times. He said, I would have said 5 times that they intentionally walked, so I could have been sleeping for some of those games because that happens. A little tongue-in-cheek there.
Yeah.
But I think that's the example of, he uses the info, but also uses his I don't want to say common sense, but his gut, his baseball stuff, too. Where he's not analytics, they have to do this, so he's probably thinking, we've done it a lot because that's what the analytics say.
Yeah.
He's using it as part of the decision-making process.
And what you should. If you have that information, it shouldn't dictate what you do or don't, but it should really help you inform.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that a lot more with what he does. Yeah, it's the team hitting-wise, I know they don't have guys with a lot of high average, but it's still they're getting on base more.
Right.
You're getting guys to second base, and there's been just better situational hitting than there was the last couple of years.
And they're still attempting to steal, even though they're getting thrown out. You know, I've seen that a few times, and I think even Tim Dillard said it one time. He's like, they're still going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, just because they got thrown out or they've been thrown out the last couple times. I think it might have been in that Cardinal series when Contreras was. He's like, they're still going to do it. They're still going to try to put the pressure and still going to go out there and steal.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to shy away from that.
No.
So
that's just how, in my mind, how that you got to just keep that pressure on because something bad could happen, especially in a key situation when you're making that run to second base. Somebody throws it out in the outfield. Contreras had a couple of those for the Cardinals.
Right. Yep.
That really can help you.
Exactly. And that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Toyson Ford and Hy-Vee. And again, don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, the Resonance Branding Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. Also, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. And if you got a few seconds, if you could, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. Big thanks to Justus Cleveland for joining me. And until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.